How are we doing today? So my name is Zach,
I'm Kelly.
I'm Adam. I'm Eli.
and we are doing a presentation on system-based protection and what really happens with your systems and how they're protected. So the outline that we're going to go through in our presentation is basically that we're going to go through our introduction, our project goal, why is system-based protection important to any user. We're going to go down and we're going to explain a couple of current cyber threats and news that's going on today. We're going to talk about the significance of this project and what we created. Along with those significances, we're going to demonstrate some network topologies. Additionally, some defense strategies that we used, attack strategies as well, and then we're going to go over the counting information assets at the end, what we basically collected as far as like a topology goes, as a broad spectrum of understanding what we got to at the end, and then our lessons learned.
Okay, so for our introduction, our goal was to protect our hosting web server while protecting our own environment from potential hackers. So what our systems are trying to protect, we're basically trying to protect our Windows virtual machines, workstations, our Apache server, and our Ubuntu virtual machines. And some potential vulnerabilities that we found are port exploits, unsecure workstations, vulnerable passwords, and phishing and malicious viruses.
What you just said, our primary objective for this project is to demonstrate how we can attack other teams' virtual machines while implementing proper measures to protect our individual machines from potential intrusion with the use of firewalls, updating credentials, and intrusion detection systems.
Yeah, so why is this stuff important? So this was just a little bit of searching. We found a few breaches that occurred this year. There were many more through searching, but I only include a few just for this slide because they're all based on server vulnerabilities. So for the first one, Bloyer Password Management Company, it announced a breach of around 2.4 million username, passwords, email addresses, IP addresses, all because of an unsecure server. The second one, the Oklahoma Department of Securities, same situation, but this is with government files, so it's obviously way more important. Some records relating to FBI investigation, and all of this is also based off an unsecure open storage server. The next company is an emergency medical services. Company's billing information server was also infiltrated by a third party, exposing around 20,000 patients' records. And the last thing, this one hits closer to home, but actually a week and a half ago, around 500,000 employees in Tallahassee, their payroll was stolen because a hacker redirected their direct deposits to his account, and they thought this was possible from a foreign nation, but this is due to also a vulnerability in a server that had all this information.
So for the significance of our project, we basically want to be able to show security professionals different vulnerabilities and how to prevent them in the future. We also want to learn different ways on how to secure our own personal workstations and our environments. And it is important to have the right detection systems in the right place because we want to protect our machines from any vulnerabilities. And we also want to decrease the impact from a security attack by spreading it out in the field. And we also want to increase our speed and recovery.
Our topology of what we were given as far as an environment goes in the very beginning of the course. You can see here the red is just basically untrusted, and every machine that we were given for our use at our disposal was currently on the untrusted network, which is the 192.168.1.2 network.
The proposed topology that we had wanted to go with to begin, we proposed our method of approach was to set up our machines in such a way that would protect them from any possible intrusions. We did this first by configuring our Windows virtual machines behind firewalls, and the reason for this was because we figured, well, this is what we use the most in class, so this would be what other teams would try to attack first. We decided to leave our Kali machine outside of the firewall because we wanted to use this system to run scans against other teams and to try to hack their networks. This is the topology that we ended up agreeing upon, and we put it behind the PFW1 firewall hosting on our web server. The reason for this was because we wanted to see if our competition would be able to break through our newly implemented topology and access our web server. We left the Windows VMs where they were behind the firewall because these machines, like we said, we use them the most often. And in order to access the management interface in Palo Alto, we needed them behind the firewalls. And it also helped us to enable the secondary NIC card.
Basically, to manage your Palo Alto firewall, the management is on a 192.168.74 VLAN or something. And basically, you won't be able to access that 74 VLAN until the NIC is on that same subnet. So a solution to that would either be to leave them one of your workstations outside the firewall and protect it with basically software and local firewalls. Try and get that as much protection as you can because it's going to be outside the firewall, but you still want to be within the network to where you can access the management for the Palo Altos to be able to configure your firewalls on that trusted network. So basically this is just going through and defining our defense strategies. Our first defense strategy was going to be Palo Alto, and Palo Alto is a very effective way of securing your workstations and IoT devices. They basically filter out anywhere from applications to traffic to packets, and they basically protect valuable resources on your network. Obviously, every configuration design is going to be different according to the needs of the organization and what they want to protect and how they want to go about it. There's 1,000 different ways you can protect an environment, but the design of the firewall and which ways you do it, it's always going to be different depending on who's configuring that firewall and the needs of the organization. Our second line of defense was going to be a Security Onion. They're a free open source distro and with great tools. The tools used in this distro was used to monitor and alert the network admin of any intrusions. It also includes distro tools. The distro also includes tools such as Snort IDS, Squill, Squirt, and Bro. And in this demonstration, we're going to be showing Squirrel to manage all the traffic on our network environment. And lastly, we went down and thought, like, logically, you said, well, let's just common best practices and do some system maintenance and credential management, such as changing your credentials, doing routine maintenance as far as like updates, things like that. System maintenance can save you a lot of time in the long run, and they can keep your systems up to date. By keeping our systems up to date, we not only keep it secure from vulnerabilities with the latest patches, but we also keep it secure from future vulnerabilities that may be coming out. And then additionally, we changed our local Windows VM credentials and enabled all of our local firewalls in AV Defender on Windows 10, just in case they did get past the firewall. You still have secondary line of defense as far as credential management. But as you saw in some of the other demonstrations, that there are ways to gain access to a password hash and things like that, even if you put those systems in place to protect. The first line of defense, this is basically our Ethernet, our interface menu on our Palo Alto. And what you can see here is that we have connected, obviously this is a virtual environment, but in the real world you would have a box, and connected to the Ethernet 1 you would have the 192 network 72, which is red, it's untrusted. And then our 172.16.21 network is our trusted, which is green. You can see here that we've set, it's not in another menu, but you can see here that we've set security zones, and we've set that everything on the 192 is untrusted and everything on the 172 is trusted. And additionally up here, this is under the policies menu. You can see that we've also created a service profile to block out TCP ports 0 to 500. Basically, we're going to configure the Apache server to be behind the firewall. We want to filter ports with Palo Alto firewall systems, such as like 80, 135, 445. We want to make sure those are filtered and safe and not vulnerable. We want to block the ability to ping into the trusted network, which is set by the zones and the rule set. Specifically, we want to protect our web server in the event that the request falls through the rule list. So we're going to create a separate rule there. If you want to go back one, it's in the object menu in the service side. You can see that we are going to create a TCP block port service profile. We designate it to the destination ports that we want, which is 0 to 500. So we add it to that services list. We'll go ahead and move over to our policies. And here you can see we have allow any from the trusted to untrusted, just so we can have internet access out. We're going to add another security policy rule. And we're going to do a lot within this one security policy rule. We're going to block incoming traffic, but we're also going to tack things onto it so we can consolidate one rule doing a lot of different things. Basically, it's saying here that anything from the untrusted to the trusted zone coming into our firewall, you'll see that we're going to add an application. So any ping requests coming from the source to the destination, you'll see at the end we block it, so we add ping to the applications that we want to add to that rule, whether we allow or deny. We now add that TCP block ports service profile under the service category, and then basically what action do we want to do with all these settings, and we want to deny it. So this one security rule is going to block your ports by the service tag. It's going to block pings coming in, and you can see here at the end, destination is going into the trusted, and you can see here the application is ping, so it's going to deny all the pings, and it's also going to deny anything having to do with that service profile we made, which was blocking the ports 0 to 500. And it's a very large range, but for the purposes of this environment, we decided to just go to 0 to 500 and block unnecessary ports since they were coming in to the network. And this is creating another rule within it, just in case, because we want to specifically protect our web server. So we're creating a rule here to protect specifically our web server. Although it's going to have very, very similar sources and destinations, and we're also going to apply the application as ping, and we're going to also apply the service category as the TCP block profile. And I know it seems redundant, but the difference is by adding the very specific IP. It got stuck, but basically it would basically add all the same settings, but it would add that very specific IP to that web server with all the same settings. So basically, if it went through that whole list of rules and somehow passed through a rule that you didn't allow, it would get to this rule and still deny it, even though it still had some of the same configurations.
So for Security Onion, that was our second line of defense. Basically with Security Onion, we were able to track all the packets coming over the network. So as you can see here, we could see not only our IP addresses as the sources, but we could see other teams' IP addresses at the sources. And basically what we could do with that is we could take their IP addresses and we could know where the attacks are coming from and set rules to try and block those from that specific source.
So moving into defense number 3, the system maintenance and credential management may seem simple, but it's very, very useful. Basically, this slide is just showing the system maintenance is crucial to patching and updates. It's just showing a screenshot of the updates taking place, enabling Windows AV Defender and local firewalls on your local machine. This is actually a menu of the domain because these Windows 10 machines are on the local domain, and enabling Windows Defender is also very, very useful. You also want to change your password so you can go and check local users that are on there in case they might have entered and created a local user behind the scenes where you didn't see. You can also pull it up on user accounts, or you can run a command and show net users and see what users have been created, even the ones that are hidden. Basically, you would want to reset your password and rotate it every so often and verify only valid users are within this list. And as it looks here, we have 2 admins, one's a local, one's on domain, and then we have a local admin for our professor to gain access to our systems as well.
Yeah, so for our attack strategies, these are just some ways to show vulnerabilities in systems, and we're going to go over that.
Okay, so before we begin, we wanted to go into penetration testing. So basically penetration testing, also known as pen testing, is attacking your own computer system to check for any vulnerabilities. What the process does is it basically mimics a potential attack and checks to see how your system would respond to it. And we will use this on our own machines just to see like what our firewalls are looking like and what our other systems need to, like what we need to fix. And like different tools that can be used in pen testing are Kali Linux, Metasploit, Nmap, and Wireshark. And over here you can see like the different testing stages for penetration testing. So first you would start off with planning and reconnaissance. Second, you would do scanning. Third, you would do gaining access. 4 is maintaining that access. And then the last stage is analysis and WAF.
For the first attack, we're going to be going through the HTTP version scanner and HTTP certification scanner. And it goes over it scans the entire IP addresses in our private network, and then it's going to find the HTTP version so that you could plan an attack, see any vulnerabilities, any exploits that you could use against it. And we did this using Metasploit with Kali Linux. Okay, yeah. So This is usually, I'm using Metasploit and using an auxiliary scanner, which is the ATTP version scanner. That's showing the options, basically how you can manage the whole scanner, what you want to do, what you want to set the R port to, which in this case it's port 80, and what host you want to scan. So before this, we did scan a few IP addresses, and one of them was 192.168.72.126. That's part of Team C. And yeah, we found that port 80 was open, and found that basically the server was run on Microsoft IIS. I think it was like version 11. And we found that using the scanner because the port 80 was vulnerable on the IP address. Yeah, so this is continued. This is the second scanner searching for certifications. I set the R host to our gateway, so we found multiple IP addresses that showed information about their certifications, and you can see expiration dates, issue dates. We even found the PF Sense of another team, their certification date, when that expired. And that's a vulnerability because if you know what the expiration date is, you can plan, and then if it's still open by then, you can plan an attack because it's going to be open. The certification isn't supporting the PF Sense anymore. This one's pretty cool. Another vulnerability to the system was TCP port 135. And basically what you could do with this is kind of see all the communication coming across port 135 through an exploit. And I set the R port to 135, and then I just said exploit, and it basically did a reverse TCP, set up a reverse TCP handler to my IP address to port 4444, and it targeted that Windows IP address. And so with this, you can basically take over systems. Once you're in charge of the port 135, you can take over an entire system. Delete whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, hack, I don't know. But it gives you, it shows that it's extremely powerful and a really strong exploit. So it's important that you make sure that all ports are not vulnerable and secure behind a firewall. The last one, if you know, HTTP has some request methods to communicate it with the web, to communicate to it through a web server. Some of them are trace, get, post, head, put, delete, and connect. With the scanner, I'll show you in the next slide, but with the scanner, you were able to scan the IP addresses to see what HTTP request methods they accepted. And one of the important things here is that the trace method is a big vulnerability because it will allow the use of cross-site scripting attacks by allowing attackers to exploit the message loopback test and receive cookies to also take over a victim's session. And then later on, you'll see that we use other options such as the get option to receive information such as the script of an Apache web server. Showing basically an action. So once again, the same IP addresses, 7.2.126, was vulnerable because it allowed the trace method. And then actually another IP address, 7.2.130, had port 80 open, and you're also allowed to use the trace method. And if you're allowed to use that, you could use the exploit to use cross-site scripting and take over the victim session. But further, it also showed that you could use the get option for 192.168.72.126. And if you go to the next slide, I used the get option, and it was able, like I said, to find the script of the Apache web server. So that's just a simple vulnerability. You want to make sure that your port 80, HTTP port 80 is ultimately secure.
So with that being said, I decided to think a little bit outside the box, and I wanted to run a different type of scan to see if that machine was unprotected. And I used a basic tool, and it's free, you can download it. It's called the Advanced IP Scan. All it does is it scans your entire network, and it'll give back the IP address along with the name of the device, along with the MAC address that IP address is utilizing. And the way I did this is that you can see that on my local VM, I'm on 172.21. I went ahead and changed that to jump onto the 31 network since we're on the same environment. With that being said, I would be able to on that VLAN and return addresses on 31 VLAN. See what they have. They forgot to put V on the firewall, what they forgot to protect, and you can see the only one machine that I got returned was CO5 Win. If you go to the next slide, I decided to jump back to my VLAN behind the firewall and RDP to the 31. So that 192.168.72.126, I went ahead and changed that to the IP address, and I RDP'd into it. And you can see here that basically I just used the default password that some users didn't change, since I already knew that knowledge. Vulnerabilities could go down as simple as to just what information do you know of the machine or the user, the environment, what information that you are able to use to hack their systems. And basically, I logged in, I authenticated the RDP connection to that machine. Once I authenticated, it basically allowed me in as an admin, and I went ahead and I changed the administrator password to hacked123zp explanation. And this is all it's saying. Basically, decided to RDP to it, same thing. And then you can see here that it basically gave me a welcome mat into the Windows 10 environment. And from there, I just ran a command as an administrator. And you can see that I just wanted to make sure that I was on that machine, and did the same exact command, which is net user administrator, and you can change that password to whatever you like after. You can also create users in here. You can also go ahead and do sudo or run them as an administrator in the command prompt, and you can add users that you've created and even add them to local groups within the domain from the command if it'll give you the right permission. Basically, this is just a topology of the network after the firewalls and after everybody had moved, and the only machine that we basically attacked, that we gained access to, was that 172.16.31.126.
So the conclusion, the overview, overall there are many ways an attacker can exploit your system or machine. Because of all these exploits, it's important to know the necessary tools in order to remain protected, and test the integrity of your network by conducting penetration attacks against it using tools provided with Kali Linux distro. What we learned, we were able to secure a web server behind the firewall using the correct rules, learning how to understand network topology and the importance of it in order to set correct rules. We learned how to stay locally protected using antivirus updates and password best practices.
So what we struggled with was implementing the interfaces correctly without crashing the firewall. Even though this did happen a couple times, we did manage to prevail through it. We also had the troublesome to understand the network topology. This being a sandbox virtual environment, it was difficult to grasp the full understanding of the configuration. Lastly, we had trouble with configuring the onion system.
And continued, what we succeeded with was implementing the interfaces correctly without crashing the firewall. This happened several times. Like I said, we prevailed. Updating all the workstations to receive the latest patch updates. Changing user passwords, using special characters, and learning that some ports may be very vulnerable to exploit. Our team blocked these exploits by configuring firewall rules on all ports 0 through 500, and effectively assisting each other with technical help and design theories throughout the semester.